Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a En Busca de la Unidad. Y hoy les queríamos presentar a una persona muy especial, una persona que vino a nosotros casi por casualidad del día que estábamos presentando en el streaming La Puerta hacia la Unidad. Una persona que se enteró que lo íbamos a hacer y que estaba en ese momento muy contenta de que lo hiciéramos. Y esta persona tiene que ver muchísimo con este entorno que tenemos detrás. Él es Edward Price. Hola.
Hola, Miriam.
Edward Price es el productor y también es el co-guionista de The Gate, el docudrama que habla sobre el Bab, el precursor de Baha'u'lláh, ambos fundadores, el Bab de la Fe Bahai y Baha'u'lláh, como saben bien, de la Fe Bahai. Edward, ¿cómo fueron los inicios de The Gate? ¿En qué momento decidieron empezar con esta película? ¿Por qué?
In 2016, I was approached by a gentleman by the name of Steve Sarowitz. I met him at one of the Baha'i schools going on here in the United States. At that time, I was giving a lecture at the Baha'i school about the teachings of the Bab. And Steve was in my audience of people attending my lecture. And after the lecture, Steve came up to me in the dining hall and he said that he was thinking about doing a movie. He was at that time actually a new Baha'i, and he explained to me that he personally had the financial resources with which to actually accomplish the movie. So this was very interesting and intriguing to me. So when we got back home, I live in Wilmette, Illinois, right near the Baha'i Temple, and he lives in one of the towns nearby. And so we got together for lunch, and he told me his story that he was a new Baha'i at the time. He told me that just a couple days after he became a Baha'i, one of his good friends told him that, you could reach a few people by teaching the faith, or you could reach a lot of people by doing a movie on the faith. And so he thought, well, I can do that. So he approached me because of my work on the study of the Bab, and he approached a director, a very respected person who does documentaries. His name is Bob Hercules, and he's a very, as I said, very respected documentarian. And the three of us got together and we started to discuss how to do this movie. At the time, we didn't know whether the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States would welcome the idea or not. We just didn't know. And so we agreed on that we would write a business plan. Took us about 2 months to write that document. And we also decided that we wanted to have the most highly qualified people working on the project. So we asked Dr. Nader Saidi, who, in my opinion, is the world's leading scholar on the Bab. Of course, there's many superb scholars, but we thought we wanted to have Dr. Saidi on our team. And so we went out to Los Angeles, Bob, Steve, and I, and we met with Dr. Saidi, and Dr. Saidi agreed to be a member of the team. And then we put that in our business plan, and we had a meeting with the Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly in his office, and we submitted the actual written document for the National Spiritual Assembly's consideration. They told us it would be fine, they would love to see it, and we agreed upon the steps that we would take to make sure that it gets done.
Supongo, Edward, que a ustedes dos, a tanto a Bob Hercules como a usted, les hubiera encantado rodar en Irán. ¿Por qué no lo hicieron? ¿Y cuándo decidieron irse a Andalucía a hacer la película?
That's a very, very good question. And you're absolutely correct that if we could shoot the film in Iran, it was Persia in the Bob's time. Mm-hmm. If we could shoot the film in the actual locations where these magnificent events in history took place, obviously that would be our first choice. However, as everyone knows, in the Baha'i community and much of the world knows, in Iran today, religious minorities are persecuted. The Baha'is are persecuted, but it's not only the Baha'is, other religious minorities also suffer under the oppression of the regime. So it became very clear very quickly that it would be too dangerous for us to attempt such a thing. The government would never let us in. If they let us in, they'd never let us out. And if we tried to do it quietly, there'd be no way to do that. And even if we tried it and somehow managed it, we would be putting the lives of the local Baha'is in danger. So it was a complete non-starter. Couldn't do it. So we had Bob Hercules did some research about production companies around the world. We considered several Middle Eastern countries, but although the conditions are not as bad in the other Middle Eastern countries, they're still bad. Not as bad, but still
bad.
Still bad. And even if we could get permission from the government, and there were a couple of places where we thought that would be possible. Morocco is an example of which is a country that is friendly to Western film projects coming to Morocco, and they're friendly to all sorts of projects, and they're religiously tolerant. But we were worried about the presence of extremists in the country. If they got word that there was a Baha'i project going on, we thought that we ourselves might be safe, but we thought that the local Baha'is would be put in danger. So we did not want to go that way either. Mm-hmm. This led us to considerations of Spain. Spain, as everyone knows, is an incredibly beautiful, beautiful country. But it has one unique quality, which is that for 800 years, there was Islamic rule and Islamic culture in Spain. Now, it's not that way now, but you have beautiful cities and you have wonderful mosques like Cordoba, and you have the Alcazar Palace, which we actually did filming at Alcazar. And you have Alhambra, and you have castles, and you have wonderful, wonderful landscapes and features that are pretty similar to parts of Iran. So we thought that this would be a good possibility. So we discovered that there were some very excellent film production companies that could handle the locations and dealing with the city councils and the paperwork and the logistics of all of this. And so we decided to reach out to one of these companies. And that company was Fresco Films, which is a brilliant, wonderful company. They do feature-length movies. They're the company that does Game of Thrones, when Game of Thrones is shooting in Spain. And they have very deep talent inside their company. Makeup, casting, production, artistic, and so forth. So we found them to be a wonderful mix of ability. And when we approached them to do the local production work, we found them very agreeable and easy to work with. I'm very happy to recommend Fresco Films. They did a marvelous job. And because of all those things coming together in Spain, we were very happy and we were proud that we could do the film in Spain.
Y entonces, Edward, había que rodar la escena de la declaración del BAP, que ocurrió en un entorno parecido a este. ¿Dónde encontraron ustedes los artesanos que hicieran esta obra tan parecida a la casa del Bab que uno conoce, que conocemos los Bahá'ís a través de los libros que ya existen?
Well, the short answer is that we had Fresco Films build it for us. But let me tell you a little bit of the story that is
Okay.
involved in that. The first thing that we did, we took a trip to Spain in February of 2017. And Fresco Films took us all over the country. And we were scouting locations, all the scenery, the palace, just all of the different places where we had to do various scenes in the script. We shared the script with Fresco, and they found locations that would be good candidates to do the filming for those particular scenes in the script. Mm-hmm. Well, they made a good effort to find us a location where the declaration of the Bab and where the interviews with Vahid, the scholar, mm-hmm. could be held. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, there's nothing like the house of the Bab in the world.
Of course.
Especially when you look at those beautiful windows behind you. It's mm-hmm. very, very unique. There's nothing like it. And although Fresco was doing a terrific job, it really was impossible to find a location that would mm-hmm. be historically accurate and bring the feelings that people would feel about that scene to the screen. Mm-hmm. So Steve, who is the executive producer, Bob Hercules, the director, and myself as co-writer and producer. And I forgot to mention, we had another young woman, her name was Tara. She was an associate mm-hmm. producer. She was part of that original team. And mm-hmm. We decided that it would be necessary to build a replica of the House of the Bab. And Fresco told us they had the craftsmen on their team that could actually do it. And they told us they had a space where it could be set up for filming. Mm-hmm. So they gave us a price. I don't know if I should tell you the actual number, but it was, no, I don't think so. I think if Steve were here, he could decide that information. But I can tell you this, it was very expensive. It was not a cheap.
It's very good.
Well, see, they really did brilliant workmanship, down to the detail of the glass and the wood and the ornaments on the wall and the doors and the set design. It was just, they did a brilliant job, outstanding. And so, of course, we feel we got our money's worth. But because it was such a unique setting, there were no locations that we could do the filming at. And so we had to make it ourselves. Now, you might find it interesting to know that we built one other set, which was not preserved, but the barracks where the Bab was executed. We built that wall. We found a castle square, 1,200-year-old castle in Spain where we could shoot the scene, but it was missing the wall. And so we built the wall for that scene also. That was thrown away at the end, but we couldn't throw away the replica. It was too beautiful. We had to keep it.
Pero Edward, ¿por qué está la réplica de la habitación del Bab aquí en Madrid, en el Centro Baha'i de Madrid?
Well, that's a fairly short answer, actually. We didn't, when shooting the film was over, normal practice in the film business would be simply to throw away the set. And Steve and I reflected on how beautiful the replica was. And we thought, well, the real house of the Bab was destroyed by the Iranian regime. And so this replica is the only life-size reminder in the world at the moment. Of course, everyone knows it's not the real house. Nevertheless, it's a beautiful reminder of the original that was in Shiraz, which I hope and pray someday the Universal House of Justice will be able to rebuild it. But until then, this beautiful replica can serve as a reminder. So we did not know how we were going to use it in the future. So we asked Fresco not just to rip it apart and throw it away. We asked them to save it for us. And for 2 years, they held it in their storage facility. And God bless them, they never charged us a penny. They did it out of the goodness of their heart. But after 2 years, it seemed reasonable that we should find a home for it. So we reached out to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Spain. I communicated to the NSA by email, and we offered to give it to the NSA. And we knew there would be some financial cost involved with moving it from Almeria, where the headquarters of Fresco Films is located, to Madrid. But we offered to pay some of those expenses. It wasn't that much, but we paid for it. And so we decided to make this beautiful gift to the National Spiritual Assembly. However, we have to give credit to the National Spiritual Assembly also, because as you can see, it's very big.
Huge.
It's huge. And as a result, it was a big decision for the National Spiritual Assembly of Spain to take this on. It was not an easy decision for them, but we're so happy and so grateful that they decided to accept the gift and to give it a home in the National Spiritual Assembly's center in Madrid. And so we can say that we have a very, very happy ending. And so the replica of the House of the Bab can continue to give us blessings in the future.
Edward, usted es guionista de The Gate, es escritor, ha escrito varios blogs sobre el Bab, ahora mismo tiene 2 libros sobre el Bab y también está acabando un tercero. ¿Qué parte de su personalidad, de la personalidad del Bab, le atrae a usted más?
That's actually a very hard question. Because the truth is, I love absolutely everything about the Bab. But I'll mention a couple of qualities just because I have to answer your question. The Bab was absolutely devoted to God. His connection to the Lord was actually transcendent, soaring, and incredibly beautiful and intimate. And so his prayers, his sense of always being in the presence of God, frankly, that's just magic. It's beautiful beyond words. I also love that the Bab's power of revelation was phenomenal. He could, using a pen and a quill and an ink bottle, write at incredible speed. And the words that came out of him were so beautiful and profound, without mistakes, perfectly formed, beautiful poetry, as magnificent as the Arabic of the Quran. Um, just his revelation was, it leaves you speechless. So that's important. And then I'll say one more thing. Can I say two more things? Um, the Bab's devotion to Baha'u'llah and his eagerness to sacrifice everything for him is very, very powerful. His connection to Baha'u'llah is just inspiring. And so that's extremely important. And then the last thing I'll mention is when you look at the story of the Bab, you're looking at a man of incredible compassion and also unbreakable courage. Nothing could stop him from his purpose. He was just unstoppable, and he showed incredible courage. So for all these reasons and many others, I'm just incredibly enamored with the Bab. And it's a privilege to be writing about him. It was a privilege to bring this movie to fruition. It's amazing to be connected to him in any way at all.
Y, Edward, ¿por qué no se le ve al Bab en la película?
That's a very important question. And the Bab, along with Baha'u'llah, along with Muhammad and Jesus and Moses and Abraham and Buddha and Krishna and Zoroaster, are manifestations of God, divine educators for humanity. And they're not ordinary people like you and me. They are something above human. They share a human body with us, like you and I share. I have a pet dog, and I share a physiology with my dog, but the dog and me are not the same. So there's a physical similarity, but we're different. Similarly, the manifestations of God, they have physical similarities to us, but the inner reality of what they are is something far beyond human. And it's the teachings of the Baha'i faith that these figures are so holy and so transcendent and so glorious that there is no actor anywhere on earth who should even attempt to portray such a figure. It would be a form of anthropomorphism and it would be with good intentions, but it would still be wrong to limit that figure in any kind of a human portrayal. So a Baha'i filmmaker will never, ever show the Bab or Baha'u'llah or any of the other divine educators. And this is out of the deep respect, love, affection, honor, and glory which these extraordinary figures of history represent. It just will never be any other way. And I think eventually the world will understand this. Now, as an interesting side note, when we started the film, we had no idea how we were going to do it. We knew that we could not show the Bab because that's the Baha'i teaching about him. We knew that going in. But at the same time, a movie is a storytelling medium. So you have to do your program, your film, in such a way as to be interesting to your audience. And no one had ever done a film like this, and you don't show the main character. This had never been done before. So, to be honest with you, we consulted with the National Spiritual Assembly. We also consulted with members of the Universal House of Justice. And we spent 2 years figuring out how it would be done. We had letters back and forth from our team to the Universal House of Justice and the NSA. We had meetings with the NSA member, the secretary, and this was an ongoing consultation, and it took us 2 years to get it right. So it was not easy, but we now know how to do it. And so that's actually one of the accomplishments of this project, that if there's a future filmmaker that comes along and wants to do a film about the Bab and Baha'u'llah, we actually know how to do it. For the first time, it's actually an accomplishment of the project that we now know how to do it. And so a future filmmaker won't need to spend 2 years figuring it out. We can just explain it to them. And so that's pretty wonderful, actually. And with all humility, I'm quite proud that we took that journey and we figured it out.
Edward, usted es un Baha'i. En un principio no creía en Dios. ¿Cómo fue que usted de repente pues se hizo Baha'i, aceptó la fe Baha'i y no la fe judía de la que es su familia seguidores?
Well, as you mentioned, I grew up in a Jewish family, and my family was not very religious. We were a little bit religious. So we did Hanukkah and the Passover Seder, and once or twice a year we would go to the synagogue, like on Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, that sort of thing. But religion was not a big part of my upbringing, my family life. That said, my parents tried to do the right thing. They sent me to Hebrew school when I was a little boy. I did about 5 years of Hebrew school until I was 13. And I had my bar mitzvah, which is the thing that 13-year-old boys and girls do in the Jewish religion. It's a very important ceremony. And so in 1967, I was 13, and I had my bar mitzvah at that time. But to be honest with you, I didn't believe it. It wasn't my parents' fault. I just didn't believe it. And in my 13-year-old mind, I didn't have much knowledge of anything else. I knew there were other religions, but I didn't understand anything at the time. So to me, at that stage of my development, the choice was binary. It was to be a Jew or to be an atheist. That's how it was in my mind at the time. And actually, I thought the more honest thing was to be atheist at that time of my life. So I went all the way through high school as an atheist. And I was not the friendly atheist. I argued with people all the time. And I'm sure I annoyed a lot of folks. And so I graduated high school and I went to college as this argumentative atheist type of personality. I went to the University of Virginia and just began my college years. And I met a woman, her name was Mary. She was a freshman like myself. And we became good friends, and we used to study, keep each other awake at night when we had to study for exams. And it was several months before I knew that Mary was a Baha'i. She didn't like throw it in my face right away or anything. It just came out eventually in a gradual way. And so, of course, as soon as I found out that she was a Baha'i, I started to go on the attack and tried to show the ridiculousness of any religious belief. And Mary was a wonderful person to talk to. She never got angry. She never got defensive. She didn't really even try to prove me wrong. She would listen. And then she would listen. And then she would pause. And then she'd say, well, Ed, have you thought about this? She would ask me a question. And the funny thing was, Mary always asked me a question about something I had not thought about. And so even though I was the argumentative type of person, the one good quality that I really had going for me was I think I was a basically honest individual. So when she asked me a question and I had not thought about it already, I would actually go and think about it. So in this very gentle and loving way, without getting into any fighting or arguing against one another, she gradually led me to think in new ways. She opened up my mind. And I gradually came to appreciate that most of her knowledge, she was brilliant, by the way, and that most of her knowledge was because of Baha'u'llah. And when I figured that out, I realized that I should learn something about Baha'u'llah. So I started to read some books, and I dropped my aggressive way of talking about religion, and I became more open and receptive. And so gradually, it wasn't that long. From beginning to end, the conversation was about 3 months. And in about 3 months, I had completely come to a totally different understanding. And I realized with all my heart that Baha'u'llah really was a messenger of God. And the one funny point to add to the story is that I believed in Baha'u'llah as a messenger of God before I believed in God. I kind of got there backwards. I figured if Baha'u'llah was a messenger of God, then there must be God. So I started to believe in God. Now, over time, I've learned so much more. It's been 46 years now, and the Baha'i faith is my life. And I married a Baha'i. I have a Baha'i daughter, and I'm very involved in the Baha'i community, and I love it with everything in my heart. But that's kind of my story.
Muchísimas gracias, Eduard, por habernos concedido esta entrevista. Ha sido para nosotros realmente ha sido todo un placer. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Mariam.